I didn't understand what it meant to lose someone while they were still alive. I don't mean death. I mean that other kind of loss. The one that happens quietly, in real time, while you're still saying, "I love you," while you're still making plans, while you're still holding on to the idea that what you have is solid. I used to think betrayal was loud. I thought it was something obvious. Something you saw coming. Something you could point to and say, that was the moment. But that's not how it happened. It was smaller than that. Softer. Almost polite. It slipped in through a crack I didn't know was there. And once it was inside, it didn't matter how much love I poured over it. It didn't matter how many apologies came after. It didn't matter how hard I tried to understand. Something had already been taken. At first, I didn't even know what I was grieving. I just knew I couldn't breathe the same way anymore. I remember sitting alone one night, staring at my phone like it was going to explain something it couldn't. Like if I looked long enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. But they didn't. Because the truth is, nothing makes sense once trust breaks. People talk about heartbreak like it's sadness. What I felt wasn't just sadness. It was confusion. It was disbelief. It was this slow, sick realization that the person I thought I knew, the person I thought would never be capable of hurting me, had stepped over a line that couldn't be erased. And the worst part was, I couldn't even decide what the line was anymore. That's what no one tells you. When something like this happens, it doesn't come with a clear label. It doesn't show up as a villain twirling their mustache. It shows up as a story. An explanation. A mistake. A moment. Something that's supposed to be not that serious. And you find yourself holding it in your hands like a broken glass, trying to figure out where it shattered. I replayed everything after that. Every conversation. Every reassurance. Every time I ignored a weird feeling because I didn't want to be the kind of person who doubts. I didn't want to be suspicious. I didn't want to be controlling. I wanted to be the guy who trusted. I wanted to believe love was enough. But love doesn't stop someone from making choices. Love doesn't stop someone from crossing boundaries. Love doesn't stop someone from doing something and then coming back with tears in their eyes, asking you to understand. And maybe that's the hardest part. Because she did cry. She did sound broken. She did sound like she meant it. That's what made it so complicated. If she had been cold, if she had been cruel, if she had acted like it didn't matter, maybe I could have hated her. Maybe it would have been easier. But she didn't. She came to me like someone confessing, like someone trying to save something before it drowned. And I remember thinking, this is what makes it dangerous. Because when someone looks remorseful, you want to believe them. You want to believe it was just a slip. You want to believe you can rewind. But you can't rewind something you didn't see happening until it was already over. Afterward, I started noticing how betrayal doesn't just hurt once. It keeps hurting. It changes the way you hear silence. It changes the way you read messages. It changes the way you interpret pauses. Even when nothing is happening, your mind starts searching. Not because you want drama. Because your body remembers what it felt like to be blindsided. There's a kind of paranoia that isn't about jealousy. It's about survival. I would catch myself doing it. Waiting for the next shoe to drop. Listening for the part of the story that hadn't been said yet. Because once you realize someone is capable of breaking your trust, you realize they're capable of doing it in ways you might never fully understand. And that thought stays with you. Even when they swear it won't happen again. Even when they promise they'll do anything. Even when they say all the right words. It's strange. The world doesn't stop. People still go to work. They still laugh. They still post pictures. But inside you, something becomes very still. Like you're watching your own life through glass. I remember walking outside one day, seeing couples holding hands, hearing someone laugh nearby, and thinking, they have no idea. They have no idea what it feels like to have your future suddenly feel uncertain. Because that's what it really was. It wasn't just the pain of what happened. It was the way it infected everything that was supposed to come next. The plans. The promises. The someday. All of it suddenly felt like it was sitting on something unstable. Like one wrong step and it could collapse. And I started wondering how long it had been unstable. That question is poison. How long? How long had I been trusting someone who was already drifting? How long had I been building something with someone who wasn't holding it the same way? How long had I been in love with an idea instead of a reality? I didn't want to ask those questions. But once they appear, they don't leave. And the truth is, I didn't tell anyone at first. I kept it quiet. Because it felt humiliating. Not just what happened, but how deeply it affected me. I felt stupid for being hurt. I felt weak for not knowing what to do. I felt angry at myself for still wanting to hold on. Because I did. I wanted to hold on so badly. That's what makes betrayal so cruel. It doesn't always destroy love. Sometimes it leaves love intact, and destroys everything else. It leaves you loving someone you no longer feel safe with. And that's a special kind of torment. People think the choice is simple. Leave or stay. Forgive or don't. But it's not simple when the person who hurt you is also the person you still reach for instinctively. It's not simple when you can still hear their voice in your head, still remember the version of them you trusted completely. It's not simple when you're grieving something that isn't fully gone, but will never be the same. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the end. Not the event itself. The feeling afterward. That subtle shift. That quiet understanding that something had changed permanently. Because once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. And even if you patch it, even if you pretend it's fine, you always know where it is. I wish I could tell you there was one clear moment where I understood everything. There wasn't. It was more like waking up in a room that feels familiar, but something is slightly off. And you can't explain it. You just know you're not as safe as you thought you were. That was the first night I realized trust doesn't break like a branch. It breaks like a thread. Almost silently. And once it's snapped, you can spend the rest of your life wondering when it started to fray. Lena and I didn't meet in some dramatic way. There was no crowded bar story, no stranger across the room, no romantic coincidence. We'd known of each other for years. Our families ran in the same circles. The kind of community where people recognize your last name before they know your first. The kind of place where you grow up watching the same faces at the same gatherings, and you assume everyone's life will stay in the same orbit forever. For most of that time, Lena was just there. A familiar presence. Someone I'd see occasionally, exchange polite words with, nothing more. But then, in my mid-20s, something shifted. I ran into her at a small event, one of those casual things people show up to because it's expected. I remember noticing how different she seemed. Not physically, exactly. More like she'd grown into herself in a way I hadn't registered before. She laughed at something someone said, and it was easy. Unforced. I found myself watching her without meaning to. Later that night, I messaged her. Just something simple. A comment about how it was good to see her. She replied almost immediately. And then we kept talking. At first it was harmless. Just catching up. Sharing little pieces of our lives. What we were doing, where we wanted to go, what we thought mattered. But it didn't stay casual for long. The conversations got deeper fast. Not in a heavy way. More like, natural. Like we were skipping steps that other people had to take. I remember one night, maybe a week into talking, she asked me, "Do you ever think about what you want your life to look like?" I said, "All the time." And she said, "Me too." That was it. That was the beginning of the feeling. The feeling that this wasn't random. We talked about the future in a way that should have scared me. Marriage. Kids. The kind of home we wanted. The kind of relationship we didn't want. It wasn't like we were planning a wedding after 2 weeks. It was more like we were comparing maps and realizing we were both heading toward the same place. And when you're someone who spent years feeling like you're always slightly out of sync with everyone else, that kind of alignment feels like fate. I'd dated before. I'd had relationships that were fine. Some even good. But with Lena, it felt different. I don't know how else to say it without sounding naive. It felt like relief. Like my nervous system finally unclenched. When we went on our first real date, it wasn't flashy. Just coffee, walking around downtown, talking until the sun started to go down. I remember thinking, this is too easy. Not easy like effortless in a lazy way. Easy like two people speaking the same language. She was warm. Thoughtful. A little anxious, in a way that made her honest. She didn't play games. If she liked something, she said so. If she was nervous, she admitted it. That kind of transparency felt rare. And it pulled me in. By the time we officially called each other boyfriend and girlfriend, it almost felt like a formality. Like we'd already been emotionally committed before the label caught up. I told my friends about her with this embarrassing seriousness. I'd say things like, "I've never felt this sure." And they'd smile in that way people do when they're happy for you but also waiting to see if life humbles you. I didn't see it then. I was caught up in the idea that love, real love, was supposed to feel certain. Lena made me feel chosen. Not just wanted. Chosen. She'd say things like, "I've never been able to picture a future until now." Or, "You make me feel calm." And I'd believe her, because she made me feel the same way. Looking back, I can admit something I couldn't admit then. I didn't just love her. I needed the story. I needed to believe that something in my life was simple and good. Because everything else felt uncertain. Work was stressful. My friendships were scattered. I'd watched enough relationships around me fall apart that I wanted proof that it didn't have to happen that way. Lena felt like proof. She fit into my life so seamlessly that it almost felt like she'd always been there, waiting. Our families liked each other. People approved. There was no chaos, no forbidden element. It was safe. And safety can be intoxicating. Sometimes more intoxicating than passion. We started building little rituals. Sunday mornings together when we could. Cooking dinner at my place. Watching shows and half paying attention because we were really just enjoying being in the same room. There was one night, maybe 2 months in, when she fell asleep on my couch with her head on my shoulder. I remember sitting there frozen, afraid to move, thinking, I could do this forever. That's what I told myself. Forever. We talked about trust early. Almost too early. She said, "I never want to be the kind of person who lies to someone I love." And I said, "Me neither." We said those things like vows, like speaking them out loud made them permanent. And because she seemed sincere, I didn't question it. I didn't consider that sincerity doesn't prevent mistakes. Or choices. Or temptation. I just saw a girl who looked at me like I was home. When she got accepted into her program away from home, I was proud of her. Genuinely. She was excited, nervous. She'd worked hard for it. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Not because I thought she was untrustworthy. Because I thought the world was. Distance introduces space. Space introduces possibility. And possibility is where fear lives. I remember sitting with her in my car a few weeks before she left. The windows were fogged up from our breath. She held my hand and said, "This won't change anything." I asked, "Are you sure?" She squeezed my fingers and said, "I'm sure. You're my person." That phrase hit me so hard I almost cried. My person. It's such a simple thing to say. Such an enormous thing to believe. I kissed her forehead and told her, "We'll be okay." And I meant it. I meant it with everything in me. When she left, I watched her walk through the airport security line until she disappeared. I remember standing there longer than I needed to, like if I stayed still enough, time would rewind. But it didn't. The first few weeks apart were full of longing, yes, but also reassurance. We missed each other loudly. We sent pictures of little things. Meals. Streets. Sunsets. The kind of stuff couples send when they're trying to bridge distance with proof of life. And every time her name lit up my phone, I felt anchored. Like love was still real. Like the future was still intact. I didn't know then that the same certainty that made our relationship feel like destiny was also what would make the betrayal feel like a death. Because when you build someone into your definition of forever, even the smallest fracture doesn't feel small. It feels like the ground shifting under your feet. And even in those early days, even before anything happened, there were moments when I'd catch myself feeling something I couldn't explain. A faint unease. A quiet awareness that destiny is a beautiful word. Until it becomes an excuse to ignore what's right in front of you. After Lena left, I tried to become the kind of boyfriend who didn't worry. The supportive one. The steady one. The guy who says, "Go have the time of your life," and actually means it. And I did mean it, mostly. I was proud of her. She'd earned the opportunity. She'd been restless for a while, feeling stuck, feeling like life was too small. This was her chance to breathe somewhere bigger. So I told myself that loving her meant letting her grow. But loving someone from far away does something strange. You start filling in gaps with imagination. If they don't answer right away, your mind doesn't just sit quietly. It starts writing stories. At first, the distance felt manageable. Almost romantic, in a way. We'd fall asleep on video calls. She'd walk around showing me little corners of her new world. A cafe she liked. A street market. The view from her window. I'd smile and nod and ask questions, trying to be present. But there was always a layer underneath. A quiet awareness that I wasn't there. She was building days I couldn't see. New routines. New faces. New versions of herself. And I didn't want to admit how much that scared me. The first week, she was constantly texting. "Look at this place. I miss you. This is so different." It made me feel included. Like even though she was far, I was still part of her experience. Then the second week, the messages slowed a little. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. She'd respond later. She'd say she was tired. Busy. Out with people from her group. Normal things. Healthy things. I kept reminding myself of that. But I started checking my phone more often than I wanted to. I'd tell myself, she's just adjusting. And she was. She was meeting people. Making friends. The kind of fast friendships that happen when everyone is new and lonely and thrown together. She'd mention names I didn't recognize. Went out with Maya and Chris. Met some people from the other campus. They're really fun. I'd say, "That's great." And I meant it. But I also felt something twist in my chest. Fun. That word started showing up a lot. She'd always been a little reserved at home. Thoughtful. Careful. She didn't party much. She wasn't reckless. But away from everything familiar, she sounded lighter. Like she'd stepped into a version of herself that didn't need to be careful. I didn't know if that was good or bad. I just knew it was different. One night, maybe 3 weeks in, she called me while walking back to her apartment. The streetlights behind her made her face look pale on the screen. She was laughing about something, telling me how her group had gone out dancing. I remember smiling, but my stomach tightened. Dancing? I asked. Yeah, she said, casual. Just a club. Everyone goes. I tried to sound relaxed. Are you having fun? She grinned. It's kind of crazy here. People are just free. Free. That word hit me harder than it should have. I didn't want her to feel trapped. Not with me. Not with our relationship. But I couldn't ignore what freedom can sometimes mean when you're far away from consequences. I didn't say that, of course. I said, I'm glad you're enjoying it. And she said, don't worry. I'm not doing anything stupid. I didn't ask if she thought I was worried. She'd brought it up on her own. That stayed with me. There were other small things. She started dressing differently in pictures. Not in a dramatic way. Just, bolder. More like someone experimenting. She'd post group photos where she was pressed close to people I didn't know. Her smile looked real. And I hated that a part of me felt jealous of her happiness. It made me feel small. Like I was sitting in Maple Falls, living the same days over and over, while she was becoming someone else in a place where no one knew her history. Sometimes on calls, she'd seem distracted. Like she was half listening. I'd be talking about my day, and she'd nod, eyes flicking off screen. I'd ask, are you okay? And she'd blink and say, yeah, sorry. Just tired. I believed her. But tired became the default explanation for everything. Tired. Busy. So much going on. And I didn't want to be the boyfriend who demanded more. So I swallowed it. There was a moment, maybe a month in, when she didn't call at all one night. No warning. No explanation. I sat on my couch with the TV on mute, phone in my hand, waiting. I told myself not to be dramatic. It's one night. But I couldn't sleep. At midnight, I texted, everything okay? No response. At 1 in the morning, my brain started spiraling. Not into cheating, exactly. Not yet. More into a vague sense of being left behind. At 2, I finally fell asleep. In the morning, she texted, sorry, I passed out. Long night. That was it. No detail. Just long night. I stared at those words for a long time. Long night could mean anything. Studying. Drinking. Talking. Laughing. Forgetting to miss me. I typed back, it's okay. And I meant it, because what else was I supposed to say? I didn't want to create problems from thin air. But the air didn't feel thin anymore. It felt heavy. The version of Lena I knew back home was gentle. Predictable. Rooted. The version of Lena over there was still her, but also, expanded. Like she'd stepped into a room with new doors. And I couldn't see which ones she was opening. Sometimes she'd reassure me without me asking. You know I love you, right? You're still my future. I'm just having experiences. I'd smile and say, I know. But reassurance offered too often starts to sound like someone trying to convince themselves. I hated that thought. I hated that I was even capable of it. Because I trusted her. I did. And that trust was built on something that felt almost sacred. The idea that we were aligned. That we were different. That we weren't like other couples who fall apart the second distance appears. I wanted to believe that so badly. So whenever a flicker of unease showed up, I pushed it down. I told myself love meant patience. Love meant giving space. Love meant not letting fear turn into control. But fear doesn't disappear just because you refuse to name it. It waits. Quietly. And looking back now, I can see that the separation didn't create betrayal out of nowhere. It created a version of our relationship where things could happen unseen. Where Lena could become someone slightly unfamiliar. And where I could start realizing that not knowing everything about someone is normal. Until one day, it isn't. And even then, even with that faint unease growing in me, I still believed we were okay. I still believed the distance was temporary. I still believed love was stronger than opportunity. I didn't understand yet that sometimes distance doesn't just separate two people. Sometimes it reveals what was always possible. The scary thing about red flags is that they rarely look red in the moment. They look beige. They look like normal life. They look like someone being busy, or tired, or adjusting. And if you love someone, you become very good at painting over discomfort with understanding. That's what I did. The little shifts started stacking up, but none of them felt big enough to confront. It was more like, the shape of us was changing. Calls that used to happen every night started happening every other night. Then sometimes not at all. When we did talk, she'd be animated at first, telling me about something funny that happened during the day, or some new place she'd discovered. But then, somewhere in the middle of the conversation, her energy would dip. Like she was checking out. I'd hear background noise sometimes. Voices. Music. Once, I asked, "Are you out right now?" She hesitated, just a second. "Yeah," she said. "I'm with some people. I can talk though." I told her it was fine. I didn't want to be the guy who made her feel monitored. But after we hung up, I stared at my phone wondering why she hadn't just told me up front. That hesitation stayed with me. It didn't feel like a lie. It felt like editing. And editing is where trust starts to get complicated. She started using phrases that were new for her. "It's just how it is here. Everyone does it. It doesn't mean anything." Those words came up whenever she mentioned going out. At first, I thought she was just explaining cultural differences, social differences. But after a while, it felt like she was defending things I hadn't even accused her of. One night, she sent me a picture of herself with a group of people. They were crowded together, smiling, arms around each other's shoulders. She looked happy. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. Not because she was doing anything wrong. Just because she looked far away. Not geographically. Emotionally. Like her life was filling up with moments that didn't include me. I typed, "Looks fun." She replied, "It was. I wish you were here." And I believed she meant it. But wishing isn't the same as needing. I started noticing how often she mentioned one person in particular. Not in a suspicious way. Just, frequently. "Yeah, he was there too. He's in our group for everything. He's funny." I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to. I told myself it was normal to make friends. And it was. But my brain started cataloging details anyway. The way she'd laugh when she said his name. The way she'd gloss over certain parts of the night. The way she'd suddenly become vague. One evening, she called me while walking home. Her cheeks were flushed, hair a little messy. She looked like she'd been out for hours. "How was your night?" I asked. "Good," she said quickly. "Just good?" She laughed. "Yeah. Just good. We went out, had drinks, danced." There it was again. Drinks. Dancing. I tried to keep my voice light. "Are you drinking a lot?" She frowned like I'd insulted her. "No. Not a lot. Just socially." "Don't be weird." Don't be weird. That phrase hit me harder than I expected. Because I wasn't trying to be weird. I was trying to stay connected. But I apologized anyway. I'm not. I'm sorry. I just miss you. Her expression softened. I miss you too, she said. I'm just trying to enjoy this while it lasts. While it lasts. I knew what she meant. The program. The experience. But something in me heard something else. Like she was talking about a version of her life that didn't include me. After that, I became quieter about my discomfort. I started telling myself that jealousy was immature. That trust meant not interrogating. That love meant letting her live. So I swallowed things. I watched her stories online without reacting. I waited longer before texting. I pretended not to notice when she took hours to respond. It became this silent negotiation inside me. How much can I feel without making it her problem? There was one weekend where she barely spoke to me at all. Just quick messages. Busy day. Out with friends. Talk tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and she sounded exhausted. I feel like I'm running on fumes, she said. I wanted to ask, from what? But I didn't. Instead, I said, get some rest. She thanked me like I was being understanding. And I was. But understanding started to feel like erasing myself. The weirdest part was that when we did have good calls, they were really good. She'd tell me she loved me. She'd talk about the future again. She'd say things like, this is just temporary. I can't wait to come home. And those moments would reset me. They'd make me feel stupid for worrying. See? Everything's fine. Then the next day, she'd disappear again. It was like emotional whiplash. Closeness. Distance. Closeness. Distance. I started feeling like I was chasing her attention without meaning to. And I hated that. One night, I asked her something simple. Do you still feel like we're okay? She paused. Of course, she said. Why wouldn't we be? I shrugged even though she couldn't see it. I don't know. You just feel different sometimes. She sighed. I'm not different. I'm just here. I'm just living. Living. As if I wasn't. As if my life had frozen the moment she left. I didn't argue. I didn't want to guilt her. But after we hung up, I sat in the dark and admitted something to myself for the first time. I was afraid. Not that she was cheating. Not yet. I was afraid that she was discovering she didn't need me as much as I needed her. And that kind of imbalance is its own warning sign. It doesn't mean someone is doing something wrong. It just means the ground is shifting. And once the ground shifts, it doesn't always shift back. I kept telling myself these were small things. Nothing. Normal. Just distance. Just life. But even then, even before I had any real reason, a quiet part of me started to wonder. If the version of Lena I missed was already becoming a memory. The night Lena went out, I didn't think much of it at first. It was a Saturday. I remember because my whole day had that slow weekend feeling. I ran errands. Cleaned my apartment a little. Tried to stay busy in the way people do when they're waiting for something without admitting it. She'd mentioned earlier that her group was planning to go out. Just dancing, she said. Nothing crazy. I told her to have fun. And I meant it. I wanted to be the kind of boyfriend who didn't make everything about himself. I didn't want her to feel like she had to shrink her experience just because I was back home. So when she texted me a picture of herself getting ready, I smiled. She looked beautiful. Happy. Alive. I replied, "You look amazing." She sent a heart. Then, "I love you." Then, "Talk tomorrow, okay?" That was normal. That was fine. The night went quiet after that. I didn't hear from her, but I wasn't expecting to. She was out. Time zones were weird. People don't text their boyfriend while music is pounding in their ears. Still, I checked my phone more than I wanted to. Around midnight, I saw she'd been active online. A story posted. Flashing lights. A crowd. Laughter. I watched it once. Then again. There was nothing wrong in it. Just a room full of strangers and a version of her I wasn't part of. I went to bed eventually. I woke up in the middle of the night, disoriented, and checked my phone out of habit. Nothing. In the morning, I expected a message. Something casual. Last night was fun. Or even, I'm hungover. But hours passed. By late afternoon, I started feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. I told myself not to spiral. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't a normal text. It was one of those messages that already carries weight before you even open it. Can we talk? My stomach dropped. I typed back immediately. Yeah. What's wrong? There was a long pause. Then, I'm really sorry. When someone starts with that, you know the conversation is already past the point of normal. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Her face filled the screen, and I knew instantly something was off. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair was pulled back messily. She looked like she hadn't slept. Hey, I said carefully. She swallowed hard. Hi. I waited. She stared at the screen like she was trying to gather courage from it. Then she said, I did something stupid. My throat went dry. What happened? She shook her head quickly, like she was trying to stop herself from falling apart. I went out. I drank too much. I wasn't thinking. The words came out in pieces. I shouldn't have, I don't know why I. Lena, I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Just tell me. She blinked rapidly. A guy kissed me. For a second, everything went quiet in my head. Not silence exactly. More like the world muffled itself. I stared at her, waiting for more. She rushed to fill the space. It wasn't like I didn't want it. It just happened fast. I swear. I could hear her breathing. I could hear my own. I said, slowly, how does that just happen? She flinched. We were all dancing, she said. In a group. And he was there. He was talking to me. And then he asked if I wanted to get a drink and I said yes because I didn't think. She stopped. My stomach twisted. You went with him alone? No, she said quickly. Not alone. I mean, people were around. But, it was just us at the bar. Just us. She kept talking. I was really drunk. I wasn't making good decisions. We went back to the dance floor and then, he just did it. She covered her face with her hand for a second. I froze. And then I realized what was happening and I left. I left right away. I felt something sharp and ugly rise in me. Not anger yet. More like disbelief. I said, why were you letting him buy you drinks? Her eyes snapped up. I wasn't letting him. I didn't think it mattered. That line. I didn't think it mattered. I could feel the distance between us stretching into something else. I wanted to be understanding. I wanted to say, people make mistakes. But another part of me kept whispering, mistakes have steps. You don't just teleport into someone's mouth. I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I asked, did you kiss him back? She shook her head immediately. No. No. I swear. It was like my brain wasn't even there until it happened. She looked terrified. I hate myself for it. I watched her face, trying to read truth from panic. She seemed sincere. But sincerity doesn't erase what happened. I said quietly, men don't just kiss you for no reason. Her face crumpled. I know, she whispered. I know what it looks like. I know I shouldn't have gone with him. I shouldn't have kept drinking. I shouldn't have been dancing with him like that. Like that. There was something in her phrasing that made my skin prickle. I asked, what do you mean, like that? She hesitated. It was just, close. People dance close there. It didn't feel wrong in the moment. That was the excuse. The environment. The culture. The alcohol. The moment. Everything except the choice. I could hear how badly she wanted it to be an accident. I wanted it too. Because if it was an accident, then maybe our future was still intact. If it was a choice, then what did that say about us? She kept apologizing. Over and over. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. I would take it back if I could. I sat there, staring at her through a screen, feeling like I was watching someone confess to breaking something precious and then holding the pieces out with bloody hands. At one point she said, I left right away. I came home and cried. I didn't sleep. I couldn't keep it from you. That was supposed to mean something. The confession. The honesty. And it did mean something. But it didn't undo the image forming in my mind. Her in a crowded room. Her laughing. Her accepting a drink. Her body close enough to someone else that a kiss was possible. I hated that my brain was doing this. I hated that I couldn't stop seeing it. I asked, who is he? She shook her head. Just someone. It doesn't matter. That answer felt wrong. Everything matters when you're trying to rebuild trust. But I didn't push. Not yet. She said, I feel like I'm becoming someone I don't recognize here. Like these friends, this environment, it's changing me. Changing me. As if she was being acted upon. As if she wasn't acting. Then she said something that scared me more than the kiss. I'll come home. I blinked. What? I'll leave, she said quickly. I'll quit the program. I don't care. I'll come back and fix this. You're more important. Her desperation filled the space between us. It should have comforted me. Instead, it made my stomach sink. Because people don't offer to burn down their lives unless they're terrified of what they've done. I said, don't make decisions like that right now. She cried harder. I can't lose you. And there it was. Not just remorse. Fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of being seen differently. Fear of the story changing. I sat back, exhausted. I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to believe this was the only thing. That it was just a drunk mistake. Just a kiss. Just an excuse. But even as she apologized, even as she swore it meant nothing. I couldn't shake the feeling that this night was going to become the explanation for everything. And explanations have a way of hiding what they don't want you to ask about. Because the more she talked, the more I realized. The kiss wasn't the only part one didn't understand. After that call, I didn't feel like a person anymore. I felt like a shell walking through my own life. I went to work the next day and stared at my computer screen without absorbing anything. People talked to me and I nodded at the right times. I smiled when I was supposed to. Inside, I was somewhere else. Somewhere in that club she described. Somewhere in the space between, it just happened, and I made stupid choices. That night, Lena kept messaging. Long paragraphs. Apologies. Promises. I'm so sorry. I'll never drink like that again. I can't believe I hurt you. I love you more than anything. I didn't know what to do with the words. I wanted to respond with something that would make sense of it. But nothing made sense. So I gave her small replies. Okay. I need time. I don't know. She called again the next day. Her voice was calmer, but it sounded rehearsed in a way I couldn't explain. Not fake. Just controlled. Like she'd spent the last 24 hours building a version of the story she could live with. Can we talk? She asked softly. We are talking, I said. She exhaled. I just want you to understand. That word. Understand. It sounded like she wanted me to file this into a category where it could be forgiven. She started from the beginning again. We went out as a group, she said. Everyone was drinking. I didn't plan on getting that drunk. It just happened. I listened, silent. She continued, he was there. He was friendly. I didn't think anything of it. I asked, had you talked to him before that night? There was a pause. A little, she admitted. Just in the group. Like normal. Normal. That word was doing a lot of work. I said, so he wasn't a stranger. He wasn't nobody, she said quickly. But he wasn't important. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. I could feel myself clinging to that phrase even as something in me resisted it. I asked, why did he ask you for drinks? I don't know, she said, frustration creeping in. People do that. It's not, I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't answer. She softened again. I know now it was a big deal. I know it was wrong. I'm not defending it. I'm just telling you how my brain was that night. That's what made it so confusing. She wasn't dismissing it. She was grieving it. But grief can also be performance. And I hated that I was thinking like that about her. She said, when he kissed me, it was like I woke up. Like everything snapped into focus. I pulled away. I left. I asked quietly, did you say anything to him? She hesitated. I don't remember exactly. That answer landed heavier than it should have. Not remembering. Alcohol does that, yes. But not remembering also creates space. Space where anything could fit. I said, did he follow you? No, she said quickly. No. I left fast. I didn't give him a chance. I believe that part. Or maybe I needed to. Then she said, I came home and I cried. I felt disgusting. I felt like I betrayed you. That word, betrayed, hit me. Because she was naming it. She wasn't calling it an accident anymore. She was calling it what it was. But then she added, I swear it was nothing. It didn't mean anything. It was just a moment. A moment. Moments don't break people. Choices do. I didn't say that. Instead, I asked something I hadn't asked yet. Were you flirting with him? Her breath caught. No, she said, too fast. Then, softer, I mean. I was being friendly. I wasn't trying to do anything. Friendly. Another soft word. I could feel the outline of something she didn't want to name. I said, Lena, men don't just go for it unless they think they can. She started crying again. I know. I know. That's what kills me. I must have seemed like I was okay with it. I must have given the wrong impression. I hate myself for that. That was the shape of her confession. Not a clean admission. Not a full denial. A middle space where she could be both guilty and innocent at the same time. And I didn't know what to do with it. She kept talking. I've been struggling here, she said. Emotionally. I've been feeling lonely sometimes, even with people around. I think I got caught up in trying to feel normal. Normal. I wanted to ask what normal meant. Normal as in single? Normal as in carefree? Normal as in not accountable? But I didn't. She said, I contacted my therapist. I told them everything. I want to work on myself. I want to be better. Better. As if this was a self-improvement issue. Like she'd eaten too much sugar and needed to reset. I know that sounds harsh. But that's how it felt in my chest. Like my pain was being turned into her growth journey. She continued, I'm scared I'm becoming a bad person here. I don't like the version of me that made those choices. Those choices. Plural. That word stuck. I said, what choices? She went quiet. Then, carefully, going with him for drinks. Drinking too much. Dancing too close. Not thinking. It was a list of small things. And that was the problem. Small things add up. Small things are how people cross lines without admitting they're crossing them. She said, I didn't intend for anything to happen. I didn't want him. I want you. I believed she wanted me. I also believed she wanted the life we'd imagined. But wanting isn't the same as protecting. I asked, why didn't you tell me you were talking to him? I wasn't talking to him, she insisted. Not like that. It wasn't a thing. Not a thing. Until it was. I sat there, rubbing my forehead, feeling exhausted. I didn't want to interrogate her. I didn't want to be suspicious. But suspicion had already entered the room, and it wasn't leaving. She said, please don't throw us away over this. Throw us away. As if the relationship was a glass she'd dropped by accident. As if I was the one deciding whether it shattered. I said quietly, I don't know what to do. Her voice cracked. I'll do anything. I'll come home. I'll leave the program. I don't care. I just want to fix this. Again with the drastic offer. It made me feel cornered. Like if I didn't forgive her, I was the one destroying her future. I said, don't do that. But I will, she insisted. You're my future. That word again. Future. It felt heavier now. Less like a promise. More like a bargaining chip. I realized something in that moment. Her confession was real. Her remorse was real. But it was also incomplete. Not necessarily because she was hiding something huge. Maybe because she couldn't face the full truth herself. Maybe because she needed the story to stay small enough to survive. A kiss. A mistake. A drunk night. But my mind kept circling the same question. If it was truly nothing, why did it feel like she was telling me only what she could afford to tell? I didn't accuse her. I didn't demand more. I just sat with the discomfort, listening to her cry through the phone, feeling my own chest ache with a grief that didn't match the simplicity of her words. Because somewhere underneath her apology, there was a gap. And gaps are where doubt lives. And doubt, once it enters a relationship, doesn't need proof to grow. It just needs silence. After the confession, the relationship didn't feel like a relationship anymore. It felt like an emergency. Everything became about managing something. Managing her guilt. Managing my sadness. Managing the fragile thread between us so it didn't snap completely. Lena shifted into a kind of panic I hadn't seen before. She texted constantly. Not the normal kind of texting. Not casual updates or jokes. It was reassurance, over and over, like she was trying to press herself back into place through words. I love you. I'm here. I'm so sorry. Please don't give up on me. If I didn't respond quickly, she'd send another message. Are you okay? Did I make it worse? Please talk to me. At first, I told myself it was a good sign. She cared. She regretted it. She wasn't hiding. But after a few days, it started to feel like she was trying to control the outcome with sheer intensity. Like if she stayed close enough, I wouldn't have space to think. And I needed space. I needed to sit with what had happened. But every time I pulled back, she panicked harder. One night, I didn't answer for 2 hours because I was out grocery shopping. When I got back, there were 7 messages. The last one said, "I feel like I'm drowning." I stared at that line and felt something twist. Because part of me wanted to comfort her. And part of me wanted to scream, "I'm the one drowning." I called her anyway. She answered immediately. Her voice was tight. "I thought you were leaving," she said. "I was buying groceries," I replied, flat. "Oh," she whispered, like she'd forgotten the world still existed outside her fear. Then she started crying. "I can't do this," she said. "I can't live with what I did." I closed my eyes. "Lena. I hate myself," she continued. "I feel disgusting. I feel like I ruined the best thing in my life." There was something about the way she said it. Best thing in my life. It sounded like she was talking about me. But it also sounded like she was talking about what I represented. Stability. Home. A future that didn't involve consequences. She said, "I made an appointment with my therapist. I'm going to talk about everything. I want to fix whatever is wrong with me. Whatever is wrong with me." Again, it framed the betrayal as a symptom. Not a choice. I didn't correct her. I didn't have the energy. She went on, "I stopped going out. I told my friends I need space. I'm staying in. I'm focusing on us." I asked quietly, "Did you tell them what happened?" She hesitated. "No," she admitted. "I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want them to think I'm that kind of person. That kind of person. The kind who betrays. The kind who crosses lines. The kind who breaks trust." I said, "So they don't know why you're pulling away?" "No," she whispered. That answer made me feel strangely alone. Like I was holding a secret that wasn't mine. Like her guilt had become something I was responsible for protecting. A few days later, she said it again. "I'll come home." I was sitting at my kitchen table when she said it, staring at a cold cup of coffee. "I'm serious," she insisted. "I can leave. I don't care about the program anymore." "Stop saying that," I replied, sharper than I intended. She went quiet. "I just want to show you I'm serious," she said. "I know you're serious," I said. "But you can't fix this by blowing up your life." "But I already blew it up," she whispered. That was the first time she sounded angry. Not at me. At herself. Or maybe at the situation. Or maybe at the fact that regret doesn't rewind time. Then she softened again. "I just want you to feel safe again." Safe. That word felt impossible. Safety was what we'd had. Safety was what I thought she represented. Now safety felt like something I'd imagined. She started offering rules. "I won't drink anymore. I won't go to clubs. I'll only hang out with girls. I'll share my location if you want." Every offer made my stomach sink. Not because they weren't sincere. Because they were desperate. And because none of them addressed the real problem. The problem wasn't alcohol. The problem wasn't clubs. The problem was that she had been in a situation where someone else could step into our relationship at all. And that she hadn't stopped it before it got close enough to hurt me. One night, she said, "Tell me what you need." I didn't know how to answer. What I needed was to go back. To before. To the version of us that felt untouchable. But that wasn't possible. So I said, I need time. She whispered, time feels like distance. I almost laughed at the irony. Distance was the whole problem. She said, I'm scared you'll realize you deserve better. That line made me feel something complicated. Because maybe I did. But I didn't want better. I wanted her. Or at least, I wanted the her I thought I had. The more she tried to fix it, the more I felt myself pulling inward. I became quieter. More cautious. Every time she said, I love you, I believed it and doubted it at the same time. Every time she said, it meant nothing, my mind asked, then why did it happen? I started noticing how much of the conversation was about her fear. Her shame. Her anxiety. Her need for reassurance. And my pain became something we stepped around carefully, like broken glass. If I expressed hurt, she'd spiral. If I stayed calm, she'd cling. There was no space for me to just be devastated. One evening, she said softly, do you still see a future with me? I stared at the wall for a long time before answering. I don't know, I admitted. She started crying again. I can't lose you, she said. I'll do anything. Anything. That word again. It sounded less like love now. More like survival. And that scared me. Because desperation can look like devotion. But desperation can also hide things. It can push people to say the right words, make the right promises, build the smallest version of the truth so it stays manageable. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to forgive her. But somewhere in the middle of all her damage control, I realized I wasn't being pulled back into safety. I was being pulled into a storm. And I couldn't tell if her panic was because she loved me. Or because she was afraid of what would happen if I stopped believing her. I didn't find out the truth in a dramatic way. There was no confession at midnight. No sudden message from a stranger. It was quieter than that. Which somehow made it worse. After Lena's apology became routine, after the panic settled into this constant low-level anxiety between us, I started trying to live again. I went to work. I saw friends. I forced myself to eat. But everything felt filtered through the same question. Was it really just a kiss? I hated that my mind kept circling it. I hated that I couldn't let it go. Lena wanted it to be over. Not the relationship. The incident. She wanted it contained. A mistake, confessed, forgiven, repaired. But trust doesn't work like that. Trust isn't a light switch. It's a fabric. And once it tears, you start noticing every loose thread. One afternoon, about a week after her confession, Lena sent me a picture of her sitting at a cafe. It was meant to be normal. A little update. She wrote, trying to have a calm day. I stared at the photo. Then I zoomed in without meaning to. In the reflection of the window behind her, I could see shapes. People. Movement. And there, just barely, was a familiar silhouette. A man's arm on the chair beside her. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was someone sitting nearby. But my stomach tightened anyway. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was becoming paranoid. That this was what insecurity does. It turns you into someone you don't recognize. Later that night, we talked. She sounded tired. How was your day? I asked. Fine, she said quickly. Quiet. Quiet. I thought of the cafe. I asked casually, did you go alone? A pause. Yeah, she said. Just needed air. Her answer came a little too fast. Like she'd anticipated the question. I let it go. But something in me didn't. A few days after that, one of her friends from home messaged me. Not someone I was close with, but someone who knew we were together. The message was simple. "Hey, how are you holding up?" I stared at it. Holding up. That phrase implied knowledge. I replied, "I'm okay." "Why?" There was a long pause before they answered. "I just heard things have been rough." I felt my throat tighten. "Heard from who?" Another pause. Then, Lena mentioned something happened. So she had told someone. Not the full details, maybe. But enough. I didn't know why that bothered me. Maybe because she told me she didn't want anyone to know. Or maybe because it meant the story was already moving outside of us. Becoming something other people could shape. I asked, carefully, what did she say? They replied, just that she made a mistake when she was out. That she feels awful. I stared at my phone. Made a mistake. That was the phrase she was using. Small. Vague. Safe. I didn't push further. I didn't want gossip. I wanted truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. He kissed me. I froze. I left. It meant nothing. And underneath it all, another question started to surface. Why did he feel comfortable enough? Comfort doesn't come from nowhere. A week later, Lena called me crying again. Not the frantic panic from before. Something softer. Almost resigned. I feel like everyone here is judging me, she said. My heart jumped. Who knows? She hesitated. I told, one person. One person? She sighed. I needed to talk to someone. I was falling apart. I wanted to be understanding. But the inconsistency was starting to wear me down. I asked, who did you tell? Another pause. Then, quietly, a friend from the group. My stomach dropped. The group? Just a girl, she rushed. Not him. Not the guy. Just someone I trust. I didn't answer right away. She continued, I told her because she saw me leave that night. She asked if I was okay. Saw me leave. That detail was new. I said slowly, she saw you leave with him? No, Lena said quickly. She saw me leave the club. Alone. I rubbed my forehead. It felt like every conversation added a new piece. Not necessarily bigger. Just, different. I started asking questions more directly after that. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I felt like I was standing in fog. And I needed landmarks. Lena, I said one night, how long had you been talking to him? She went quiet. I told you, she said. Just in the group. That doesn't answer the question. Her voice tightened. I don't know. A couple weeks? Everyone talks. It wasn't special. A couple weeks. That was new. I said, did he text you? Silence. Then, softly, sometimes. In the group chat. In the group chat, I repeated. Yes. I could hear how carefully she was speaking. Like she was walking through a minefield. I asked, did he message you privately? She inhaled sharply. Once or twice, she admitted. My stomach turned. About what? Nothing, she said quickly. Just, jokes. Plans. It wasn't serious. Once or twice. Nothing. Jokes. The words felt slippery. I said, why didn't you tell me that? Because it didn't matter, she whispered. But it did matter. It mattered because it meant the kiss wasn't a stranger's random act. It was the end of a line. A line I hadn't been shown. I felt my voice go cold. So you were talking to him privately, you went with him for drinks, you danced with him, and then he kissed you. She started crying. Please don't make it sound like that. How else does it sound? It wasn't like I wanted it, she said desperately. I didn't have feelings for him. I swear. Feelings. That word entered the conversation like a bomb. I hadn't even said it. I hadn't accused her of an emotional attachment. But she went there anyway. Which made me wonder if she was arguing with something inside herself. She said, I was lonely, okay? I was away from you. I was trying to make friends. He was just there. Just there. Like temptation is furniture. I asked, did you ever think about telling him you had a boyfriend? Her sob caught. I did. Did you? Yes. When? Another pause. I don't know. Early on. Her answers were starting to sound less like memory and more like defense. I felt something hard settle in my chest. This was the second betrayal. Not the kiss. The editing. The gradual release of truth in manageable doses. Each time I asked, there was another, small, detail. A couple weeks of talking. Private messages. Someone else knowing. The kiss becoming less sudden. Less accidental. More like a moment waiting to happen. I didn't think Lena was some villain. I still don't. I think she was someone who stepped too close to a line and then panicked when she crossed it. But panic doesn't make you honest. Panic makes you strategic. That realization hurt more than the image of the kiss. Because I could forgive a drunken mistake. I didn't know how to forgive someone shaping the truth. One night, I said quietly, why didn't you just tell me everything from the start? Her voice was small. Because I was scared. Scared of what? Of losing you, she whispered. There it was again. Not scared of hurting you. Scared of consequences. I sat in silence, feeling something inside me shift. I thought about how much she'd begged. How much she'd promised. How desperate she'd been to keep the story small. And I realized something terrifying. Maybe the kiss was the first crack. But this was the real break. Because now, even if nothing else had happened, I couldn't stop wondering what else I hadn't been told. And once you start wondering that, you're not in a relationship anymore. You're in an investigation. And love doesn't survive interrogation for long. After the private messages came out, something changed in me. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't yell. I didn't break things. I didn't tell her we were done. It was quieter than that. It was like my mind finally stopped reaching for excuses. The story she'd given me at first, one drunk moment, one sudden kiss, had been something I could almost hold. Painful, yes. But contained. Now it felt, expanded. Not into some huge affair. Not into something cinematic. Just into something worse in a different way. A slow drift toward a line she pretended she didn't see until she was already over it. And I couldn't unsee that. Lena kept trying to talk. She kept asking what I needed. She kept crying. But my responses became shorter. I wasn't punishing her. I was empty. There's a kind of grief that doesn't look like sobbing. It looks like silence. I remember sitting in my car after work one evening, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I wasn't thinking about the kiss anymore. I was thinking about trust. About how fragile it actually is. How you can spend months building something, imagining a future, believing in someone. And then 1 week of half-truths can make it feel like it was never real at all. When Lena called that night, I almost didn't answer. But I did. Her voice was tentative. Hey. Hey. A pause. I feel like you're slipping away, she said softly. I didn't respond. She swallowed. I know I messed up. I know I didn't tell it right. But I swear to you, nothing else happened. Nothing else. That phrase was starting to feel meaningless. I said, do you hear yourself? What? You keep saying, nothing else, like I'm supposed to be relieved. She started crying immediately. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm trying so hard. I closed my eyes. I know you are. And I meant it. That was the tragedy. I believed she was trying. I believed she was sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild what's broken. Sorry just acknowledges the damage. She said, I don't know what to do anymore. I exhaled slowly. I don't either. There was silence between us. Then she asked, do you hate me? That question landed heavy. Because hate would have been simpler. Hate would have meant clean separation. But what I felt was messier. I don't hate you, I said. I'm just hurt. She whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. I know. And that was the problem. She didn't want to. But she did. Intent doesn't erase impact. The next few days were a blur. We talked less. When we did talk, it was careful. Like walking around broken glass. She'd ask, how are you feeling today? And I'd say, I don't know. Because I didn't. Some moments I felt calm, almost normal. Then I'd see something that reminded me of her, and the grief would hit again. It wasn't anger. It was mourning. Like the version of us I believed in had died. One night, I finally said something I'd been holding back. I feel stupid. Her voice cracked. Why? Because I trusted you so completely, I said. And now I don't even know what was real. It was real, she insisted quickly. Our love is real. I wanted to believe her. But love being real doesn't prevent betrayal. Sometimes it makes betrayal worse. Because you lose both the person and the story. She said, I feel like I'm paying for one mistake forever. One mistake. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was still how she framed it. One mistake. Not the choices leading up. Not the half-truths. Not the slow reveal. Just one isolated incident. I said quietly, it wasn't just one mistake, Lena. It was the way you told me. She sobbed harder. I was scared. I know. Fear again. Always fear. I started talking to a friend around that time. Not for advice, exactly. Just because I needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't her. I told him the basics. Long distance. A night out. A kiss. Then more details. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said something simple. Man, it sounds like she wanted to confess, but not completely. I stared at the floor. That's exactly it, I whispered. He nodded. That's what people do when they want forgiveness more than honesty. That line stayed with me. Forgiveness more than honesty. It wasn't that Lena was evil. It was that she was human. And humans protect themselves. Even when they claim they're protecting love. A few days later, Lena told me something that felt like delayed validation. She admitted, quietly, he'd been flirting with me before that night. My stomach dropped. Before? She sniffed. Just little things. Compliments. I didn't shut it down like I should have. There it was. The thing I'd sensed. The thing I'd been afraid to name. Not because it meant she wanted him. But because it meant she let the door stay cracked. And doors that stay cracked invite people in. I didn't yell. I just felt tired. So you knew, I said. I didn't know it would go that far, she whispered. That's what everyone says. I didn't know. I didn't think. It just happened. But, just happened, is often the story people tell when they don't want to face the fact that things happen step by step. After that conversation, something in me settled. Not peace. More like acceptance. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't making it up. My unease hadn't come from nowhere. It had been perception. And that validation didn't feel good. It felt like grief with confirmation. Lena asked again, can we survive this? I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. Surviving isn't the same as healing. Staying isn't the same as trusting. I realized that even if she never did anything again. Even if she came home tomorrow and never looked at another man. The version of me that trusted without question was gone. And I didn't know if I could love her without becoming someone I didn't want to be. Suspicious. Watchful. Afraid. That night, after we hung up, I sat alone in my apartment and thought about how quiet betrayal really is. Not the act. The aftermath. The slow collapse. The way your life keeps moving while something inside you stops. And I understood, with a clarity that hurt. That the kiss wasn't what broke me. It was realizing I might never know where the truth actually ended. I wish I could tell you there was a clean ending. A final conversation. A decision that wrapped everything up in a neat lesson. But life doesn't do that. Not with things like this. What happened between Lena and me didn't end in a dramatic explosion. It ended the way a lot of relationships end. Slowly. Quietly. With two people holding something broken and not knowing if they were supposed to keep trying to fix it or finally set it down. She came home months later. Not immediately. Not as some grand gesture. She finished what she had gone there to do. Maybe that was the right choice. Maybe it was proof that she wasn't just running from guilt. Or maybe she knew coming home early wouldn't undo anything. When I saw her again in person, it was strange. She looked the same. Her voice sounded the same. Her eyes had the same softness. But I felt like I was looking at someone through glass. We hugged. It was familiar, but not comforting. It was like hugging a memory. She pulled back and whispered, I missed you so much. I nodded. I missed you too. And I did. But missing someone and trusting someone are not the same thing. For a while, we tried. That's the truth. We went on walks. We talked. We sat across from each other at dinner, trying to find the rhythm we used to have. Sometimes it almost worked. Sometimes I'd laugh at something she said and feel normal for a moment. And then, out of nowhere, my mind would flash back. Not even to the kiss. To the hesitation. To the half-truths. To the feeling of not knowing. And the normal would evaporate. Lena did everything she said she would. She stayed in therapy. She stopped going out the way she used to. She was careful with me. Almost too careful. Like she was always waiting for me to flinch. Sometimes she'd ask, "Are you okay?" And I'd say yes, even when I wasn't, because I was tired of being the wound in the room. We never fought the way people expect couples to fight after betrayal. There were no screaming matches. No slammed doors. Just long silences. Soft apologies. And me, sitting with the strange realization that forgiveness is not a single act. It's a process. And sometimes it's a process you can't complete, no matter how badly you want to. People online love simple rules. Once a cheater, always a cheater. If they loved you, they wouldn't have done it. Leave immediately. Stay and work it out. As if love and betrayal fit into neat categories. But living through it is nothing like reading about it. Lena wasn't a monster. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't careless in the way villains are careless. She was human. She was lonely. She was far away. She made choices she didn't fully face until afterward. And then she panicked. She tried to shrink the truth so she could survive it. So we could survive it. And I understood that. I really did. That's what made it so hard. Because understanding someone doesn't erase what they did. It just complicates your anger. There were days I looked at her and thought, she's here. She's trying. She's remorseful. Isn't that what people say they want? And then there were days I thought, if trust can break this easily, what am I building my life on? I started realizing something uncomfortable. The betrayal wasn't just about her. It was about me. About how much of my identity I had wrapped up in being chosen. In being safe. In believing that this relationship meant I was finally on solid ground. When that cracked, it didn't just hurt my heart. It shook my sense of self. I became someone who noticed everything. Someone who listened for pauses. Someone who wondered what wasn't being said. I didn't like that version of me. And Lena didn't create it alone. Fear did. Loss did. The awareness that love doesn't guarantee protection did. Eventually, we had a conversation late one night. Not a dramatic one. Just honest. She sat beside me on the couch, hands folded in her lap. I don't want to keep hurting you, she whispered. I stared at the floor. I don't want to keep hurting either, I admitted. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I wish I could go back. I know, I said. And I meant it. I didn't hate her. I didn't even regret loving her. But love wasn't the only thing that mattered anymore. Trust mattered. Peace mattered. Being able to breathe in your own relationship mattered. I don't know what people want from stories like this. A villain. A hero. A clear moral. But the truth is, most betrayals don't come from evil. They come from weakness. From blurred boundaries. From moments people don't stop soon enough. And the aftermath isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's just about what you can live with. Lena will always be someone I cared for deeply. Maybe she'll never do anything like that again. Maybe she learned. Maybe she changed. I hope she did. But the part one still sit with, even now, is this. Sometimes the deepest damage isn't the act itself. It's the shift. The moment you realize you can't fully know another person. And once that realization enters your love, it doesn't leave quietly. It stays. It asks questions in the dark. It turns simple moments into doubts. It makes you wonder whether forgiveness is healing. Or just a slower way of abandoning yourself. So I'll leave you with the question that still haunts me, the one I still don't have a clean answer to. When someone breaks your trust and then begs to rebuild it, are they proving they love you? Or proving they knew they could hurt you and still ask you to stay?